Hello, I'm your host, Leonard Duncan. Welcome to a new episode of ATV-TALK and Motorsports Podcast. Please join us every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We bring you interviews with industry professionals, live events, live news about the motorsports industry in every episode. Enjoy the show. Whether we are out riding with our friends and family or racing in extreme environments, we all need good tires. That's why I recommend GBC Power Sports Tires, a division of Greenball Corp. Their products, which include XC Master, Mini Master, and Groundbuster 3, are what leading professionals in the ATV-UTV industry are using. You can get your tires at greenballtires.com or find them on Instagram as GBC Tires for further inquiries.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Not too bad. Just hanging in there.
Hey, I want to thank you so much for giving us some of your valuable time. I know that you're as busy as the rest of us, and talking about ATVs. It's been, 30 years, bud. It's been a long time.
A long time, yeah, for sure. It's a good sport. I've always loved ATVs or pretty much anything on dirt. I have a long racing career, my whole background, but it's something about dirt. I mean, you can talk to any race car drivers, and if they ever experience racing motocross or off-road cars, it's just something about that sport that just lives within us.
It never goes away, does it?
No, that's for sure.
I want to go back in time. I got some information from you, but I'd really like to hear you tell that. Is how did this all come about for you with ATVs?
How did I get involved with the sport?
Yeah, yeah. Where did your ATV love or ATV experience start?
So I've always been like a race fan, and I always liked racing. And I used to watch like Indy car races on TV as a kid, and watch it with I guess like my dad, or just it was on TV. It's something that's always interested me. My parents, my dad is an Ivy Leaguer. He's a executive CEO type person. My mom worked with him, so I did not grow up in a racing family or any sort of that type of situation. But I always loved dirt bikes. I always seeing them on TV or just in the magazines. And when we were on vacation, when I was like 9 years old, 10 years old, we were up in Lake Arrowhead, and my parents had a place up there, and we were go down to the golf course there. My parents was a member at the Lake Arrowhead Country Club, and there was another club member there who was a realtor, and my parents were friends with him. But this guy also had a little side job renting ATVs, which I think was called like Lake Arrowhead Fun Company or Funco. And basically my parents took all my brothers and sisters and I down there and just kind of thought it would be a fun thing for us. And it just hooked me right there. It was something I've always wanted to do. It was my first time riding any sort of dirt bike or ATV. And it just kind of went, the interest, it just exploded from there. Every time we would go to Lake Arrowhead, I think we would go like 3 times during the summer. I'd always make sure my parents, okay, we got to rent them again. And then the next year, we got to rent them. And then finally, when I was 13, my parents bought an ATV for me to have, and then made a racetrack in my front yard. Rode up and down the street and everything. And then we had a family friend that used to ride dirt bikes, so he would take me out riding sometimes too. And I just got the love for it and always wanted to race. And back then they had 3 and 4 wheel action magazine and Dirt Wheels and the whatever publications, I forgot. I think ATV Sport was one. Maybe that's a little later, but I would always read those, take them to school and have them in class, and that pretty much what started the whole thing. And then I've always wanted to race.
That's so awesome. And how did you end up racing?
Racing came in two parts. One is obvious. It's what I've always wanted to do. Like I said, from being a young kid, looking at the magazines and riding the four-wheelers up in Lake Arrowhead, and just wanting to compete. And I think that part just came from watching it on TV or other types of racing on TV, and just wanted to race. I think probably I got a little bit involved with it because I'm the youngest of a big family, and my parents kind of drive me in a sense. They kind of said, "Hey, as long as you go to school, you do well, and you don't have to get straight A's, but you have to do great in school and stay out of trouble, and and be smart and everything. You make the right decisions. We'll help you and get you involved with racing." So I mean, I figured that's a good deal and everything, But that was I think I was in 8th grade at that time or something like that, and so that was my kind of like talk with my parents in the involvement, and then sure enough, they ended up getting me a Suzuki 250, and I started racing in '87. I think at the beginning of the '87 year, just out here local in I think Gardena, California, at Ascot Park, because they had like Friday night motocross every week.
You've seen a lot of changes then in the local area, because you almost there's no place to ride anymore.
Yeah, there's there's a lot of places that shut down even before I started, because a lot of people are like, "Dude, have you ever been out to Indian Dunes, or was it Saddleback or something like that?" I'm like, "No." I was like, I think that closed down like right when I started riding and everything. I used to go up riding in Templin, which is like right before Gorman, going up the 5 right there. And they shut that down shortly after that. And then just a lot of the tracks and everything. Luckily I was around to race at Carlsbad. That was one of my favorite tracks.
It was an awesome place, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it was a cool place to go race, and I used to watch the motocross races on, I think it was like Diamond P Sports back in the day and everything. And it was always a fun, cool venue to watch. And then my first time going there, I was just like, "This is awesome." Actually, I think I got a picture on my Instagram, I think, of me at Carlsbad of that year in '87 in the newspaper, ATV Sports, I think what it was. It was like a local newspaper or like a newspaper magazine that came out every week or something.
San Diego Off-Roader?
What's that?
Was it the San Diego Off-Roader?
No, it was called ATV News. That's what it was.
Okay.
It was just like a newspaper print that came out once what's ATV? No, I'm sorry, not ATV News. Cycle News.
Right, there you go.
Cycle News is what it's called, but they always had like ATVs in there because they are always from all the local tracks, from Carlsbad to Ascot to I don't know what, LA County Raceway, and all up and down California.
Wow. You spent some time racing Mickey's. Did you do the Golden State Series as well?
I ran a couple of the Golden State races when they were more in the local area, I guess, just in Southern California. I didn't go pro until I was like 18, 17. So I was like, 89. 89 kind of did a little bolt, and then 90 that's when I went to go run pro full time and everything. But I did a couple Mickey Thompson races as an amateur, or running the intermediate class in 88, and then I ran in 89 and 90. But 88 I only did like, I think 2. I think I did like the Rose Bowl and the Coliseum. And then because I was still in high school, so I couldn't travel to like the far away ones, or breaking into it, and my parents were kind of breaking into it as well, with the traveling in school. But I ran Mickey's in '89, and then '90 I was gonna run all the nationals in Mickey's, but it was the first national in Gainesville, Florida, I believe, and it was a TT race, and got nailed from the back with somebody and flying over the bars and broke the 2 forearm bones in my arm and everything, and that kind of ended my ATV career.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because the doctor said, that injury, you got 2 plates, 14 screws in your arms, and if you fall and break it again, it'll pretty much shatter the bones, and you may not be lucky to put it back together because it'll be a bunch of little pieces.
Wow. So an injury takes you out of ATV racing. Did that instantly start taking you away from ATVs in general?
No, not really. It ended me competing in racing and whatever, professional with ATVs. But it actually opened the door for me to go race cars. Because at the same time, my parents were like, you love racing, you're very good at it. And if you want to race like a stadium off-road car in the Mickey Thompson series, we can transition to that and find people and work with other teams and everything and move into that next level. So that was my transition into a Super 1600 or a Stadium 1600 in Mickey Thompson series. But ATVs, I was still around them, and I still kept a lot of my bikes at that time for a few years, and just would go out to like Glamis for Thanksgiving and just Pismo Beach to have fun and everything. Couple of nights. I grew up in Pacific Palisades, and that's the last little town where Sunset Boulevard hits Pacific Coast Highway, just like north of Santa Monica between Malibu. So I've taken them out in the middle of the night down Sunset Boulevard or up in the fire trails.
Oh, that's awesome.
Back in the '80s, when you're able to do that without having to worry about getting arrested or thrown in jail and everything impounded and stuff like that, when you're able to get away with things.
Yeah, now they would have locked you in jail and thrown away the key.
Yeah. But maybe before COVID, but after COVID, maybe they don't care, but
Well, yeah, after COVID, they don't care. But yeah, that is a congested area now. But I'm sure when you were younger, that was probably an awesome place to grow up.
it's still, I would say it's still the best area to grow up and everything. I mean, it has changed a little bit. I mean, Santa Monica and the whole northern, Brentwood, Santa Monica, north of Montana, as we call it, has changed. You can't ride an ATV down the streets there today. You'll have cops there real quick. but yeah, no, it's nice. I mean, I remember when there's the Palisades Highlands, they were developing it, the very top. The Highlands were built in the '70s, early '80s, and then the '90s they were building the higher ends of it. And so when they build up in the hills, everything's like graded like tiers. So we would ride our bikes all the way up there and everything, and have like big flying jumps and fake parasols jumping down and everything, like the Coliseum, and until we see the helicopter start flying over. Then we're like, all right, we gotta go.
Then you'd scatter.
Yeah, then we all scattered and everything and meet back at my house. But the good thing about that, though, because we all knew the neighborhood, we all know the routes. I mean, one night I took the beach all the way back. I figured they can't chase me on the sand. So
Crazy.
I took the beach all the way back and then ran up the canyon to my parents' house, and side of my backyard, and I could see the helicopters, and I could hear all of my friends on my other bikes, trying to find their way back. All you hear is like me, like everyone's just like running. But the best part, though, because I had so many of them, when we got back to my house, we put them behind my parents' garage and everything, behind where you can't even see them. But I still had 2 bikes in the garage, but they were taken apart with the engine out. So after everybody came back, they all knew I had ATVs and dirt bikes and everything. So whenever my three other friends showed up after my house and everything, we were just inside the house, just kicking back, watching TV, playing pool. Next thing you know, the cops are knocking on the door. And it started questioning me, like, "Hey, you guys been out on ATVs? You know, we've been looking for a bunch of guys out there." We're like, "No, you can look. They're right here in the garage." Open up the garage, and there's the two that were just stripped out with the engines out there. They're like, "See, we haven't been out." Meanwhile, behind the corner, they're just sitting there, creakily and crackling, cooling down.
Oh man, what we could get away with in the '80s that you just can't do now.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe more in the rural areas you can do that, but living in like the LA area or the west side of Los Angeles, no, you can't get away with that anymore.
I still live in the same little town that I grew up in, Southern California, just outside of San Diego. And, we used to be able to ride basically in the front yard, and it was a big yard, and you could go pretty much do just about anything you wanted with no problems. And the houses just kept coming in and closing in and closing in, and have changed the whole environment.
Yeah, yeah, that's one thing. So like I recently I've been getting these quads. I've got a couple of 250Rs now, quite a few of them actually, and one of them I bought from a guy that lives, I forgot the name of the town, but it's like right there. I guess the main road down to El Mirage. I haven't been to Mirage since probably the '90s, maybe the end of the late '80s or something. So I go down there and pick it up, and I'm like, "Dude, is El Mirage like right here?" He's like, "Yeah, it's just like half a mile down. You can ride down here and then enter right there." I'm like, "Where did all these houses come from?" Because there's houses built all around the dry lake bed. I'm like, "This is crazy." I was like, "This was like barren, empty land, no one around other than, I guess, Victorville." I don't know, but it's all like scattered houses, like closing in to Palmdale.
It's unbelievable. Hesperia, Victorville. Who would have ever thought that they would have built houses up there?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I recently, or just I guess in the last year or so, I went out to see Clark over at Nolan and everything, and cutting through the 15 to his shop over there in Hesperia. I'm like, "Whoa, where are all these houses come from?" Come from? Just beating them back. 'Cause they've always been the ones by the 15, by the freeway.
Right.
But deep in there, I'm like, I've never even seen these back here before. There used to be go riding right all around these other areas.
You used to be able to, just off the 395 up there, you used to be able to ride all over that. And now it's all houses, or they've got it so that you might be able to ride, but you're not going to ride very far before you run into a neighborhood.
Yeah, yeah. And I saw, I think, yeah, during the summer, I cut across from Victorville or Adelanta area up to 395. It was 395. It went to like Mojave and then over to like Bakersfield to Tehachapi area. And driving through the desert there, you could see all like the infrastructure being laid in there and everything for like future use or something. Because you can see like big water pipes coming out of the ground in the middle of the desert, nowhere. Like it's gonna be like a future pump station or something. And the roads are like double wide and everything, the both directions, and the big center deal. I'm like, wow, it looks like they're planning like mass development at some point or something. Maybe not in the rest of my lifetime, but like maybe like 50 years from now or 100 years from now. But you can see like all the grading in the roads and everything.
Well, just in the 50 years living where I live, it's totally changed. I mean, I graduated high school at El Capitan, and they still had hitching posts to tie your horse up.
Wow. Yeah, yeah, no, it's crazy. So that's just gonna, all those riding areas, all those cool places, like where I used to go to out there. At least, I don't hear you.
Sorry about that.
Ah. Yeah, but all those riding areas, they're all disappearing. I mean, the places I used to ride, they're no longer. I mean, I guess I don't know where you go out in the desert.
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
pretty much are going to go to places like Ridgecrest, and you can ride out there still.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that's up the 395 quite a ways.
yeah, yeah. I guess Gorman's still open, but Gorman I think is just a small little area you can ride.
Yeah, and the restrictions are pretty heavy.
Yeah,
Spark arresters, registration. I mean, within reason, I believe that you should have all that stuff, but you're not going to burn down Glamis or Buttercup or any of these places. So why they have those restrictions there, I don't understand.
yeah,
And
yeah.
registration is just a moneymaker.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So you raced the 1600 cars in Mickey's and in the pace races.
Yeah, I raced them in the Pace series when they ran that after Mickey's. During Mickey's, yeah, that's when I pretty much made that transition into cars or off road cars, and I ran both classes. I ran the Stadium 1600, and then after a couple of years, I switched over to what was the Ultra Stock class, which was like the SUVs, like the Jeep Cherokees and Explorers that they ran. So I drove one of the Jeep Cherokees. I think it did like 93 and 94. Then Mickey's went away, I believe, in 95.
Yep, 3 rounds in.
Yeah, they go after Seattle or something.
Yep.
But then the Pace came around, and that was kind of cool. It was a good deal to get back in the stadium car. And then I traveled out to Montreal and did that race for like 10 or 11 years, from like 95 to 05.
In Canada, in the 1600 car, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, I ran out there pretty much every year, except for 9/11. I didn't run that year.
How did you transition to asphalt?
You know what? So, like I said, when I was young, I always wanted to race IndyCar. It's like almost every kid's passion or dream or something. But it was something that had interest me, and I always had interest for that. But the likeliness of that ever happening is, every kid says they want to race an IndyCar or a stock car or whatever. But I went like the motocross, the ATV route, and everything, and started racing that. But then once I got into racing the off-road cars and whatever in the stadium racing, Mickey Thompson's, do you remember Jerry Stansbury?
Yes.
From Mickey Thompson?
Very much so.
Remember, he always did the Stansbury shuffle when he would line everybody up at the grade line, skipping backwards. So he I think left Mickey's in 92, I think. It was 91 or 92. It was I think it was 92 was his last year working for them. And then he went on I guess just starting his own business called Stadium Competitions, where he would like represent drivers or teams. And I was like his first client. We hired him to manage my team and my deal and everything. And because of that, he kind of got me wanting to develop my driving skills, I guess, a little bit, or just kind of expand out to other types of racing. And so he got me, I guess, set up to run the Jim Russell Racing School at Laguna Seca and run some of their amateur pro-am series cars that they have and everything to do like test days and lapping. It just more or less was to learn other driving skills and other things that may adapt to the off-road car. Just the whole thinking process, and it's two different type of cars, but it was just kind of one of those things that he felt that would be a good learning tool to better your skills in racing in general. But because of that, that got me really, really interested into pavement racing, open wheel racing. And it just kind of went from there in a sense to where I was talking with my parents and a few people, and it's kind of like, I would like to try to do other types of pavement racing. And at that time, there was the Dodge Shelby Can-Am series. And the series, I saw it before on TV and everything, and there were cool looking cars back then. And I was like, that'd be kind of interesting just to see, because I was sponsored by Goodyear, and Goodyear down here in LA is up by where the Goodyear racing division was down by the Goodyear Blimp, and it was managed by Little Joe, who was his name. But Carroll Shelby also had his office there where they had the Goodyear tires stored at. So I would always go down and pick a tires for an off-road car and see these cars and see Carroll Shelby there sometimes. And I just kind of like, I want to race one of these cars. And that just kind of was my first introduction to that. And we just kind of did the research, found a team, found a car. I mean, I test drove one of the earlier known drivers, Mimo Ghibli. He's a very well-known sports car driver. And he was driving that series at that time, and they were based out of Sonoma. And I went up there and tested their car a couple times and felt like this is something I wanted to make a transition to and change over. So
wow, that's so freaking cool. Carroll Shelby.
Yeah, so he was a good guy, He's a lot of good stories there and everything. And but yeah, so I ran that series for while I was running Mickey's, I was running that series in '94 and '95. But then the same situation like other series, though. Things start to die out, and you got to look for different directions. And when Mickey's went away, the Dodge Shelby series in '95 was kind of like slowing down. And actually, I think Dodge pulled out in '95 for that series. So what was next, was kind of up in the air and everything. And then that's when I jumped into same thing, looked around and talked with some teams and got into test a US F2000 car and then made that transition. And, I think we were at Crandon in '95, and Kevin Singleton, he ran Smart Performance, which he built the Toyota engines for a lot of the stadium guys and everything. And he built my engines, and he was kind of running my off-road car at that time and some of my road racing stuff with the Can-Am car. And we were talking to him at Crandon when we were running there. And we were talking about '96, what are we going to do for that? And then he was just like, I know the guys at Van Diemen, and let's just build an F2000 car. So we pretty much ordered one of those and started that series to get into running the SECA Pro Series, F2000 series all across the country for '96 and '97. Which was kind of cool because like all the guys that I knew from the Dodge Shelby Can-Am cars, they made that same transition at the same time.
So you're racing the same people.
Yeah, racing the same guys and everything. And but that series was crazy because there was like 60 cars would start that race. I mean, there was a lot of them. I mean, they had like a Group A and a Group B and everything. It was pretty insane. I mean, but yeah.
What was the draw for you in that? I mean, you go from an ATV where there's no cage, there's nothing, there's nothing to protect you, to a 1600 stadium car that, from what I'm told, because I got to help Marty Hart a little with his car, they're kind of hard. They were kind of hard to drive.
Yeah, the 1600 cars. I mean, they're it's a rear engine car. And you got the gearbox. You got all that weight in the rear and the front end. It's like a dune buggy. It's super light in the front, and then you have all this weight in the back. So going to the driving school and racing those cars helped me out a lot on how to handle and drive that car. So when you say that Marty said it's a difficult car to drive, to me it was actually a very easy car to drive.
Really?
Because you have the the turning brake and everything, and it just driving a road car, you have to plan for your turns and everything, how to enter a turn, come around the turn, and then exit the turn, and carry the speed momentum. So I adapted all of that in my style in driving the 1600 car. And once I was able to adapt that, it changed dramatically for me in competition wise. Because once we went to Montreal first time, or that last year in Mickey's, last couple of years actually in Mickey, I was running more up in front and everything. But then when the Pay Series came around and everything, I won like the 3 years that they ran the championships in that series, and I raced against Jerry Welchel and all the guys that ran Mickey's as well and everything. And I was the guy to beat in that series, and it was just hold on, my computer just went to sleep there in sleep mode. But like Jerry, so like say with the Pay Series, we had the car that was the car to beat. Me, my driving style adapted to that, and it was just a fun car to drive. And I guess when it's fun, it's easy, so to say.
So the driving school helped change not only your asphalt abilities, but it brought your dirt abilities to a whole new level.
Yeah, for me, yeah, it was a whole new level and everything. It's just understanding how to corner, understanding the fundamentals of braking and getting on and off the throttle and shifting and everything. It's just because granted, in the off-road car, there's room for slop, or there is going to be slop. You're dealing with this much room for error, whereas in an Indy car, you only have that much room for error. So if you could tune your skills in an open wheel car, but this small room of error, this window and slop in the off-road car is going to narrow down to here. So the little slop you have, you're closing that in more and everything. So my mental thinking was just to perfect it as best as can be. But there's also some other things I did too with my stadium car that I did different from, or what I've learned over the years and everything. So like the Pay Series, we built a new car for that series over the one I had in Mickey's, which we had totally modified and adapted and changed things to make it a really good fast car. Actually, I think I ran that car for the first year of the Pay Series and won the championships. So the second year, we built a new car, a complete new car with all the changes that we made to it. But from my knowledge from open wheel racing, I adapted it to my new car, like gearing things, engine stuff, and the Toyota engines. They're at that time $8,000, $9,000 engine. Mine was far more than that. Because even to this day, I still don't want to say what we were doing, but basically, it's the same engine that they run in a Toyota Atlantic engine. The difference was a 1600 off-road engine ran maybe 8,000 RPMs, 7,500. You probably don't want to hit 8 too many times, but a Toyota Atlantic engine runs up to 13 grand. So, wow. But there's more internal parts that allow it to do that.
That's pretty cool stuff right there.
So, and we built that car super light and everything to where we even had to add weight to it.
Isn't it better to have to add weight than it is to have to take it out somehow?
So that's how come, like I said, when that front end is real light and everything, we could add weight to the front to disperse it more.
Right.
Because we're underweight, we'll put it in the front so they'll bite, corner, and brake better.
That's awesome.
And one of in the gearbox, those are basically modified, super modified. At that time in the 90s, they're super modified Volkswagen gearboxes. either with bigger ring and pinion and stuff. I mean, why do you need 4 gears when you're running a stadium? That you can only go maybe 60 miles an hour. So you just need like a second. So like in Indy, when you qualify, they don't do it now because it's different. But like in the early days of Indy, they only ran like 3 gears in those cars for qualifying. Even though they're like 6, 7 gears in there and everything, but they only run 3. And they only run 3 because that's a lot of weight. One, it's weight when you get rid of all the gears, and 2, it's a lot of weight to spin and everything. All those extra gears that you're not going to use because you're just going to run one top gear for your qualifying run at Indy. So you don't need the other 5 gears in that stack. So they only put 3 gears in it. So the cars are geared to do like 230, 235 miles an hour for 4 laps. So all you need a gear is take off. So your normal gear would be like a pit stop gear, which would be like a 90 mile an hour gear. But they would put like a 120 mile an hour gear and then 180 mile an hour gear and then your running gear. So like that's like whenever if you watch some of the old tapes at Indy of qualifying, when they leave in the pit box, they're like taking out of the turning box to get on the track because they're just it's too tall of a gear, but they just need to get out there and get in the running gear. And when you go in that second gear, it's like at 8,000, 9,000 RPMs. Then it shifts another gear and it's like. So that's like they always say they have to keep it flat all the way around in the warm-up laps going down the track. Maybe 20 mile an hour gust of wind and then cold tires and everything. You have to go flat your first laps all the way out to build momentum and everything to get into that top gear before you take the checker flag the green flag for your first 4 laps.
How scary is it to go over 200 miles an hour?
It's actually so after the 2000 cars, I ran Indy Light cars, in the kart series. So we would run those cars at 200 miles an hour at Fontana in Michigan Speedway and a couple other, I think one other track. But jumping in the Indy car at Indianapolis going like 230 and over, or just driving more over, the car, they're difficult and challenging to drive, but they're harder to drive at 180 miles an hour than they are at 220 miles an hour. Because the way the car is built and designed to handle geometrically and the suspension on it, you got heavier springs on it to withhold 3,500 pounds of downforce. And those wings don't really come into effect until 180 miles an hour. So when you got a car that's spring rated for going 230 miles an hour and with 3,500 pounds of downforce because of the wings, it's a heavy car. Right. But when you're going 150, 180, the wings are not working 100%. So you don't have that 3,500 pounds of downforce on it. You have probably 2,000 pounds of downforce. So the car is a lot stiffer. So because it's stiffer, it's bouncing around, sliding around. You're chasing the steering wheel a little bit and everything. So when they do the rookie test, you have to hold it for like 10 laps between 180 and 190. They have different phases in there. So it's harder to do that at the slower speeds. But when you get higher over 200 to 215, then everything gets all bounded up. You get in the turns, it leans in the geometry, and the camber, the tires are going down straightaway like this in a negative and positive camber, leaning to the left. But then you get a turn to kind of pull upright and everything. So,
That's so cool.
So it's the trick. The trick of the whole game on an oval is to make the car think it's going straight. You got to manipulate it to make it think it's going straight to the turn.
To maintain the speed, correct?
Yeah, because because a lot of physics, you can't really go straight, but you got to try and make it think that it's going straight. Then that's like the ideal setup in a way that just everything. Because if you have too much caster or too much camber one way or another, you know, you're going to be scrubbing speed and slowing down. So it's just finding that ideal spot. So that's like too, when you go to a track or you watch them in practice, you always see like the Firestone or Goodyear guys, whether it's a cup race or a NASCAR race or just a local track, whoever the tire supplier, you always see them like taking tire temperatures because they want to see the tire wear and see how the car is set up. A lot of the engineers, I mean, the teams do it themselves too because you want an even tire temp across the board or as close as possible because of the camber and the casters like this. So you're riding on the tippy toes of the tire. So as you're maturing, it rolls more over, then it spreads the heat all the way across. So the inside is always going to be hotter than the outside.
Because you spend more time on it during the straightaway, and then you can't, in the turns, you can't take all of that pressure off the inside.
Yeah, no, it will always still be hotter in the inside, but then as that tire rolls over in the turn and everything, then the center and the outside will get hotter and everything. So that's how they could tell where you got a good tire balance on temperature. Because the more heat all the way across, that just means, you know, it's more grip that you're getting. If it's too cold on the outside, then it's not creating that lot of friction, so you got more tire to use.
Was it hard to be able to give your engineers or the people in your pits the information they needed to set the car, or were they pretty on top of it, being able to make adjustments off of tire temp and what they were seeing the car do on the track?
Yeah, so these cars, I mean, they have full, like in the Indy car, they have full telemetry. I mean, they know everything. They know everything that's going on in that car. I mean, how much brake pressure you're doing, where you're braking on the track, and how much steering input. They got like strain gauges on the push on the rods and everything, on the suspension rods, so they know where there's bumps. I mean, everything, even aerodynamic. They know like all that. There's sensors throughout the whole car, but they still rely on the driver. I mean, you have to be able to come back and tell them everything what's going on. I mean, like for a practice outing or whatever. I mean, you go out, you get like one out lap, and you run like 1 or 2 laps and come right back in and to tell whether that change that they did to the car, whether it helped or not. I mean, that's pretty much how quick you have to know about it to feel things out on these cars.
Wow, that they don't give you much time to adapt to an adjustment, do they?
No, because there's so many things they want to do and change. I mean, they can look at the computer and have a good idea of what I might say, but ultimately, I mean, it's the old school rule of thumb. It's kind of like, what's your ass say? Can you go out there and go flat around this turn and everything? You're like, yeah, I'm kind of like right here. I want to go flat, but I got to lift. He's like, well, why are you lifting? Is your ass telling you to lift, or the car is doing something? You kind of dissect it from there. So,
well, yeah, are you lifting because you're afraid of it, because you feel that it's not going to stick, or is it not sticking?
Yeah, or is it not sticking because the car is acting weird or something, or do we need to change like a toe out in the rear end or something like that, or toe in, just for what it feels, or the last thing they want to, you can always correct an issue by putting more downforce, but then that creates more drag and slows down the car. So they want to do it all by suspension and alignment on the car.
That's just awesome technological advancements that the layman or the most people watching it don't get to see or even talk about. One of the questions I have is, you see the cars on TV, they're shiny, they're beautiful. Are they really that clean and nice? Or are they like some of the cars where when you take the body off, they're cool, but they're not as cool as you think?
Yeah, they're pretty spot spot on, like spotless. I mean, they're super clean and everything. I mean, they show up at the track. It's like a brand new car. I mean, every one of those. I mean, whether you're driving for Penske, Chip Ganassi, or just that, team that shows up, it can only afford a couple of races a year, or it has a lower budget or everything. Those cars are like immaculate. I mean, they're, like I said, they're brand new from the minute they show up at the track, and hopefully they go back home brand new still. Otherwise,
so when one of them hits the wall, there's nothing reusable.
For the most part, I mean, it depends on what track, but yeah, like Indianapolis, you could destroy a car there in a crash. I mean, as long as it doesn't destroy the tub, they could reuse the tub, but like all the siding and everything, if it hits one side, everything on that side's gone. It may break like the bell housing on the engine and the transmission there. But when you see the one crashes where the car just disintegrates, nothing's done.
Man,
I don't know what you could pull off of that, because I mean, they're built to disperse energy like that. I mean, that's what protects the driver. It's just the energy being thrown out of the car, because otherwise, if it was solid, it would just right into you.
Right. Did you ever crash one?
Yeah, Indy Lights car, I had crashes. Indy car, I had a crash at Atlanta Motor Speedway. It was like a 13 car power lap. The car was fine. We all walked out of that one. Indy, I did spin and crash there my rookie year, but I was lucky. I came out of turn one, spun around. I think what happened. I forget what happened. I may have got cross street. That's a tricky turn there at Indianapolis, turn one. Not sure if it just psychs you out because you enter the turn, but you can't see the exit because of all the grandstands goes around it. But then also between the grandstands, like halfway through the grandstands, there's like a break about this downward, like a break between the top grandstands. So the wind comes blowing through there like a tunnel. So when you enter the turn, there's no wind, but when you get right in the middle of the turn, you might get a headwind if it's coming from that direction. So
that disrupts the car, correct?
Disrupts the car. That's going to be why I see a lot of crashes there in turn one. Now they say turn 3 is identical as turn 1, but turn 3 is an easy flat out turn. You go flat on that turn whole day, but they say it's identical turn, identical degrees, everything to the dimension identical. Only thing is, you don't have a tunnel of grandstands going around it, so it's more like psychological. But you also don't have that wind tunnel going through, because the stands block the wind, and if it's a windy day, you get like a hair dryer or hair dryer going through there, which will disrupt the balance of the car because you got no downforce, or you got your normal downforce on the wing on the front end of the car, but the minute it hits that gust of wind, it takes the downforce away, or it adds some of it and pins the front end down, and then if the car's on the edge, it will just lose out right there. That's kind of thing. But I was lucky because I didn't hit the wall. I kind of kept it off the wall. I spun all the way around, missed the outside wall, but I did a 360 and went into the short chute. But I hit that short chute wall, inside wall, just spot on the nose, just like perfect. I mean, it's almost like we got this trash can right here. It's almost like I hit it like this. If this is the nose of the car, my nose looked like this afterwards, which is flat. If this was like a point, like right here, it shoved it in and actually inverted here to where the nose was like coming out this way. It was really weird. Like my engineers and everyone's like, "Well, you pretty much hit that dead on straight and everything." But I came in at an angle like that. I didn't go straight into it. I just came in at an angle, bumped, and then bounced off of it. But it was pretty funny looking at it. I mean, but me, it was kind of those moments like, "Woo, that was close."
Did you continue racing, or did that end your day?
No, we continue racing. We just put a new front wing on it. I mean, they they had 4 quick disconnects and take the nose off and then the wing went back on, went back out there. But
That's pretty awesome stuff.
I had a crash. I mean, you know, when you lose control of a car, you kind of know what's going to happen, even though it's like a split second. You know the crash is going to happen, and you're like, you know that this is going to hurt, or you know that okay, this is like, oh no, how are we going to save it and everything. But it's when you don't know when it happens, that's the ones that you kind of like that makes you weary, because did something break on the car, or did usually something breaks, or you might have hit a bump that you didn't know about. And that happened to me at Homestead in Miami. I just got the car flat around the whole track. I mean, it was a difference from being at the end of the top 10, midway, like 5th through 10th quickest, to where you're just breathing the throttle going into turn 1, and to be flat all the way around the track. On a stopwatch, that's about 1/10 of a second, or just over 1/10 of a second difference if you're flat all the way around. But when you're doing like 190 miles an hour on a 1 1/4 mile oval to get flat around that, I mean, it's Miami Homestead was 7 degrees or 9-degree banking around it. I mean, it was pretty much flat. I mean, it was like very little banking around it, that track. They changed it over the years because of NASCAR, but at that time, it was very flat. And I just got the car set up enough to where I could go flat all the way around. So I went from like being like 5th to 10th quickest to like 2nd fastest on the track. You know, we got the car like dialed in for it. Came in and made one change. I think they just lower the car like 1 flat is what they call it. Because like on a tie rod and everything, you know, a tie rod you adjust it in and adjust it out. So they got the same thing for riding the ride height. The rods that go down to lower the front and rear. But they call it, when they make an adjustment, because, you know, like on a nut, it has like 8 sides or whatever the sides of the deal of a nut. 8 sides or 6 sides on a nut?
It was 6.
6. Okay, so there's 6 flats is what it is. So like when the flat just being the flat side of the nut right here, it'll just rotate it like 1 flat to like right there. And that will lower the car down. And you're only talking about like thousandths of an inch, you know, very small change.
Right.
I actually think we went 2 flats on not a complete rotation of the tie rod or the rod. Get by this weekend and I'll do my best. I think we end up finishing like 5th, where that one or the year after, but no, that year I hit that wall there. I mean, it's kind of destroyed the whole car and everything.
Scared the shit out of you, huh?
For the most part, because, you know, like I said, most of the times you know you're going to crash. You know it, and you brace for it. That time, I did not know it. I broke my knee. I broke my knee, or one of the bones in my knee and everything, and I still raced the next day. They built a whole new car, went overnight and everything, and I raced the next day with a broken knee, but I don't think I finished that well that race.
Wow. That is it that hard to rebuild a car, or do you have enough parts in the trailer to do a second car?
Most of the time you have a car that's pretty much partially together. It's when you tub a car, the main tub of the car, that's when it takes all night to build. I mean, the crew was there. I mean, they didn't sleep at all that night. I mean, it took them all night to build a whole new car. I mean, they have all the parts, you know, all the parts there. The other teams will give you parts if you need it, and then the car supplier, they're always there with like trailers of parts and everything. So and the engine guys, they're always there if you need engine stuff and everything.
Well, that's so crazy. When you stopped racing ATVs, did you have any idea that Indy cars were in your future?
So, like I said, it's something I've always wanted to do since I was a kid. It was just, the kid's dream and everything. Kind of like your opening on your podcasting. Like your dreams and stuff. When I was racing quads, it was something I've always looked or had in the back of mind as a childhood dream. And racing the off-road cars, and even when I ran the Formula 2000 cars, and even I ran the Indy Light cars, at that point, I never even thought I ever raced the Indianapolis 500. It was a goal and a dream. Yeah, I was aiming that right direction, but I didn't think it would ever happen. I mean, even then. So, like, when I was racing quads and everything, all that stuff we just talked about, I never even think that was the off-road car. That wasn't really in my plan. It was like Indy, but it was like kind of what's the realistic of that? The reality of that happening. So, I mean, it was, it's that day when I qualified for that race. It was like a pinch me moment. I mean, I was like going, holy shit, I'm actually doing the Indy 500. I mean, it was one of those amazing feelings ever and everything. And then I guess now being older and being away from it, and like you said, with the ATVs, me being back involved with this, seeing what's been going on over the last 30 years and putting a reunion together with a bunch of our first generation guys. And then preparing to talk to you and everything, writing all that stuff down, what I've accomplished, or just thinking back and everything, I kind of was pinching myself again and everything, kind of like, I've actually done a lot. Or when people ask me yourself, like, what have you raced? And I sit there and think about that, it's like, I've raced like everything at some point in time. Because I raced sprint cars, I raced some sports cars. I mean, I've done a lot.
Yeah, because I seen the picture of the sprint car, and I was thinking, wow, that's. Not only did I show, I was driving yesterday, and I don't even know how Instagram popped up on my phone, and I said, I showed my daughter, hey, that's the guy I'm going to be talking to tomorrow, and it was an IndyCar picture, and she was looking at it thinking, ATVs, that's not an ATV, you know. She didn't put the two, the two and two together, that you were an ATV guy that has transitioned into a whole nother world.
Yeah, no, I mean, even I'm not sure what issue. Even after I ran Indy in my rookie year and everything, Steve Casper put a picture of me in one of the magazines back then. He did like a little clipping of me in that. I'm not sure which one it was that he was with at that time, but
I think I remember that.
Yeah, he put like a little clipping in there, like Cory Witherill, the first or only ATV racer to go to Indianapolis. So the ironic, crazy thing about that, so we all know about like Ascot Park, JC
Right.
the name Agajanian is a huge name at the Speedway.
Yep.
And they built that track with Ascot in the 60s, 50s, 60s, or something like that.
I think it was built in the 50s.
Yeah, so the 50s, 60s, 70s, up to the 80s, they ran dirt tracks, midgets, sprint cars, everything. And especially in the 50s and 60s and 70s of IndyCar, I mean, you were a dirt track driver that went to Indianapolis. I mean, I don't even know, but I can't imagine how many drivers went from Ascot Park to race Indy 500 that same year or whatever, because there was a different time for IndyCar before they started putting wings and everything on these cars. Carbon fiber tubs and stuff, or chassis. But my funny story is that it's like, the guys that go to Indy from Ascot race dirt track.
Right.
I'm a motocrosser that went from Ascot to the Indy 500. But it also goes to the other funny thing about that story too, is that through my years in the '90s, making that transition over and stuff, I got to know Cory Witherill, which is JC's son and everything, and he owns Motorsports Managements, and he ended up representing me in like 2000. It was like my manager and everything in 2001 and everything. So it's just for me kind of like knowing I started at JC Agajanian's Ascot Park, and then now his son is my manager, and his team of representatives or agents or whatever you want to call them was representing me, and then now here I'm at Indy.
That is unbelievable.
So it was kind of cool and everything, but here.
Did your parents get to see you drive Indy?
Yeah, so my parents have been around my whole career. I was adopted. I'm the youngest one of like 10 kids in my family, and so because I'm younger than everybody, and there's 9 other siblings ahead of me. My parents were mid-50s, I think, when I first started racing, maybe like later 50s. So my mom and dad, they passed away in 09 and 13. So yeah, so they were around throughout my whole career. So there's only 2 races that they didn't go to, and that was the race that I broke my forearm at the national in Florida. That my parents said, okay, after that race, we're going to all your races, and they did, or at least one of them would go if both of them can. And my brother My brother does a longboard competition. He's a very good surfer, and we raced at Kansas Speedway. And then was it Kansas? Yeah, Kansas. And that track was on 4th of July weekend, and it was like probably 105 degrees. I mean, super hot. And the next year, we went back to that same track at the same time, 4th of July weekend, and my parents said, we're not going to that race. I was like, sorry to say this, but we're not going to go to that race. We're going to go down to San Diego and watch your brother surf in the competition down there. And so they ended up going down to San Diego to, I think, Del Mar or something. There was some big long pro longboard competition down there or something like that. But those are the only 2 races.
That was a much nicer place to be than 105 in Kansas.
Everything. So, but yeah, no, they were a big part of it. They were heavily involved. Like I said earlier, didn't come from a racing family, any sort of racing background. They kind of learned as I went on, and just one of the things that I learned early on in racing was from Brian Fry when I first met him. When he kind of pretty much mentored me, and he taught me everything about ATV racing. He taught me how to pull the whole shot, the techniques of pulling the whole shot and doing it correctly, and what to look for and what to watch. Taught me to do the doubles at Blythe. I don't know if you've ever been there during the Kyle Fleming race, but those doubles are huge. I mean, my first year in '87, I was like the only amateur doing the doubles because Brian taught me how to do them and told me what to do. And so talking to him and working with him over my earlier years, he told me simple things. If you really want to race and be competitive, you can have nice stuff, but you need to get championship winning stuff if you want to take it serious to that next level and everything. And you have to surround yourself with the best people, in the industry, like the best engine builders, best suppliers, best, everything that's going to make you a better rider or race car driver. You need to know all the right people. You need to know all the other top teams that you're competing against, other mechanics or riders, and just everyone. And because of him, I became friends with like Denton and Andrew Buck and Alan Knowles and Jeff Watts and Jim Putman. There's a whole bunch of guys, all the first gen guys. I mean, that was kind of like my crowd. I mean, like I was saying before, I mean, I'm putting a little get together, and some of these, like I said, some of these guys I haven't talked to in 10 years, some of them I haven't talked to in 30 years or since back then. And, I sent like Sean Finley a message like, hey, I don't know if you remember me and everything. Putting together this little reunion of a few of us there. I wonder if you're interested. And he's like, dude, totally remember you. I watched your whole career. I saw you at Indy and everything. Same thing with like Jeff Watts. Is like, you took my quad back to Loretta's. I totally remember you. So, so I was like, okay, cool. I was like, I wasn't forgotten or something.
No, you were definitely not forgotten.
Well, I mean, because like I said, I was short-lived. I mean, I had that injury and everything. I was there. I mean, I was raced every weekend someplace. I'm not a first gen guy, but I started at that same time because I was a young 15-year-old then. But I was around all those guys and looking at the magazines of them when I was like 12 years old, 10 years old, wanting to be a Jimmy White or a Donnie Banks and it just when I started, I got to know them at that time and everything. I guess I ended in 90, so I guess I am an 80s ATV rider.
You are.
So, I mean,
Cory, sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's cool that I got to know all those guys. So, like I said, from Brian and Brian just mentoring me and hooking me up, and his thing was you just gotta surround yourself around the right people and everything, and get to know them. So, with that little bit of his knowledge to me and everything, I just carry that all the way through my racing career. I mean, I was talking to him like, we've been friends on social media for a long time, but we haven't met up really until like a few years ago and everything, during COVID. I went over to and everything. Actually, he contacted me about his bike because he still has his 87 bike and everything. And he saw online that I had a bunch of them and I was buying some. And he's like, hey, my bike's sitting in my grandma's house for the last, 10, 15 years and everything. He's like, you interested in wanting it? I'm like, your 87 bike? He's like, yeah, I still have it. And I was like, yeah, I'll take it. So I have his bike and everything. But
that's so awesome. Elaborate a little bit on the get together and when you think it's going to be, so that we can get the information out, or I can help you get the information out to some of the guys in that era.
Well, I got a really good. So it's funny because, like I was just saying, because of Brian, I got to know a lot of these guys from back then, and I race all around. The get together just basically started with Brian and I, meeting that one day, talking and everything, and me going out and picking up his quad from him and buying it from him, and just chatting here and there. We have another good mutual friend. I don't know if you remember him or not, John Sarna. He ran quad in the 80s.
Name's super familiar.
He ran quads like 88, 89, and then he went to with Tim Baker and himself. They ran a 2-car super light team. They were thinking 89, 90. I think he got the quads out of 88. Yeah, he was I think only like 2 years or 3 years racing quads, and then he ran a super light team throughout Mickey's until they folded. But yeah, so John lives out in the desert, in Palm Desert area, Palm Springs, I think, and he's been working out here. So I told Brian, because the three of us were like good friends back then. I told Brian, hey, John's out here and everything. Let's get together and have dinner or something. And so we've been trying to do that for the last like 3 years. It just hasn't out. So in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, it'll be kind of cool, get a few other guys together, I could call Andrew Buck or whatever, or get like Alan from CT and Denton and everything. Still talk to them. Get like a few of us. So like right before the holidays, Rick Rupert was in LA for the Chargers game because he's from San Diego. And I met him over here by me in Hermosa Beach after the game and everything. And I was talking to him and telling him that, yeah, Brian and John and I were planning to get together and have dinner. He's like, dude, count me in. And I was like, yeah, no, for sure. You can come and everything. He's like, then he was like, well, you should try to invite a couple other people and everything. He's like, yeah, that's what I was thinking. It'd be kind of cool. I've been wanting to see maybe get a reunion. He's like, let's start it. I'm like, all right, maybe, I'm still in contact with a lot of the guys, or at least on Facebook or social media. And I'm sure those guys have a way for me to get in contact with the other guys that I haven't talked to in 30 years, or maybe only met a couple times, and like some of the older guys and everything. And it just kind of snowballed from there. And then, it just needed that kick in the ass to go do it, or to start it. So meeting, I guess, Rick Rupert that night kicked me in the ass to put that ball rolling, so to say. That next Monday morning, it was Sunday next, yeah. So Monday morning, I just sent out a text and message to the guys that I know, that I have their numbers. So yeah, I'm gonna put together a reunion and everything. You want to do it? Brian Fried, Rick Rupert, John Sarna, and I, we're gonna go. Goes, yeah, count me in. Denton texted me back. He's like, yeah, I'll meet you guys there. Then I sent one to Alan and Andrew Buck. Yeah, I'll do it. And then I was looking on Instagram. Shannon Smith was on. I saw that she was on there and everything, or she was posting something. And I just sent her a message. Hey, Shannon, I'm putting together this thing. She's like, oh, that's so awesome, man. I love to go. I was like, all right, now I'm going to contact everybody. So I contacted like 15 people that first day and everything. Within like 3 days, I got 100% feedback. I'm in. When is it? Where is it? I'm like, I haven't gotten that far yet. And then White got back to me. He said he's in, and I knew he's out of town. I'm like, hey, so are you going to be in LA anytime soon or anything? He's like, well, I'll be in LA for Anaheim 1 and then sometime early March for tax season and everything. I was like, all right, well, that's my date. You're going to be out here. You're the first person that got back to me that's from out of state. That's when I'm going to do it. As I don't know the date, I got to find a location, a place that can host us and everything. And so we'll do it in March. So since that first day to now, got guys coming from Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, Arizona, Idaho, Colorado. And they're all in and everything. So I got like a list of everybody. Everyone. Only who's not coming to it are the people who have not really contacted me back yet. It's only because, and there's probably 2 or 3 that have not gotten back to me. So, but everybody else, they all got back to me. They're like, I'm in. Tell me when and where.
Well, you better make sure you get me the information so that I can post it for the guys that you haven't got a hold of. And I talked to Brian, and I definitely want to cover it.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I was talking to like Jimmy White. He's giving me contacts for a lot of guys and everything, and kind of jarring my memory on a few people that I might have missed or forgotten. And Donnie Banks called me the other day, and he was like, he's telling me what days he's available for it and everything. So we kind of got tentatively a mutual date when he can come out, and Jimmy White will be out here. So, and they've been good help as far as giving me like contacts, numbers, because like I said, some of these guys I haven't talked to in like 20 years, 15 years.
Right.
Ace or Stadium Series was running there when I was around, the ones that were around. But for the most part, it's been pretty easy to find. I think Jim Putman was the hardest one for me to find because everyone's like, no, I don't have his. No, I don't have his.
I haven't heard from him in years.
Yeah. I haven't heard from him probably since just shortly after the pace stuff. But no, but one of the guys I just reached out to had his contact and everything, and gave it to me, and he ran it by Jim, and he was like, "Dude, I'm in for sure." So I text him and say, "Hey, it's Cory," and he's like, "Dude, I'm in." So
That's awesome.
it's gonna be fun. I mean, it's who was I was talking to? I think I mentioned to Jimmy White and everything. He's like rambled off a couple other names and everything. Then he texts me back and he's like, "Or are those guys too young?" I was like, "Those guys are more '90s." I was like, "I don't know the '90s guys unless they started when I started and continued on, like a Mark Earhart and those type of deals." But I was like, "I don't know." He's like, "They're too young." And then I text him back. He's like, "I'm doing the AATVA Nationals." I was like, "Actually, I'm doing the Vet Pro 50 plus AARP National Reunion is what I'm doing." Yeah. RP card to qualify to come to this.
I don't have an AARP card, but I can get one.
But I just
How old are you?
I just turned 51.
I got you by a few years.
Yeah. But it's just it's just like it's they've had other reunions or get-togethers over the years or some sort of deal, but of just mix of everybody. But I mean, I don't know. I just kind of like think of like the first generation guys would be kind of cool.
I totally agree.
Other people, or they're not disputing it because there's a lot of talent out there, a lot of fun. But I mean, I was talking to Eric Cobb, and he was telling me that you should have came out for the Huevos deal, a couple months ago and everything. He's like, all your buddies, all your friends are out there. I was thinking of you. I'm like, yeah, I wanted to. I don't even think the only reason why I didn't because I had my son with me that weekend. But
how old's your son?
He's 13. He's 13.
He wouldn't have enjoyed it?
No, he probably would have. he would have. It would just been a little probably more. I don't know.
The invitational race they had was incredible. It was just super cold.
Yeah, I watched it. I think I watched it online or something, or I was watching some parts that you were posting, I think, over the time or something like that.
I was. My son met up with my youngest and I in Vegas, and he had never used Instagram.
Oh yeah.
She gave him like a 5-minute course on Instagram, and the way we laid out the coverage for the race, he got the obstacle section, and he had the only device that had power.
Oh, really?
We were running out of juice on everything, and the device he had still had battery, so he got to do all the live stream, and he's not even an Instagram. He didn't even know how to use it. Earlier that day he learned, and yeah, he did great. It turned out really awesome. We were super stoked with the way the coverage was, the people that came out and raced, and the fan base was super excited. It was a good deal.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean that. After I saw that, I was like, man, I should have gone out there and checked it out and everything. But it's funny because the guys who I reached out, some of them got called me or texted me and everything. Is like, is this what? Tell me more about this get together. Are we racing? Are we doing some sort of competition thing? I was like, oh no, it's a happy hour, because I have a list and I sent them a list of who the people were in. But I broke it down. I was like, all right, this is heat 1 and this is heat 2, and Terry Varner got back to me. He's like, put me down for an LCQ. So I wrote down LCQ, Terry Varner. So everyone, I think that people thought maybe I was like doing like a race or something like that. No, it's not a race. It's like I don't think most of the guys have quads or can race anything. But surprisingly, a lot of them were like, yeah, I'll bring my dirt bike, I'll bring this and that, and But
I haven't seen Terry Varner since National in '86 in Washington.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Yeah, I probably haven't seen them probably like, oh, early 90s, probably last time. Just in the last couple of years, I think I became friends with them on Facebook again, and we just exchanged numbers or messages back and forth. Because when I first started, how I met Brian was it was a race at Ascot, and I blew an engine, and so it was new. I didn't know what the hell I was doing and everything. But he came over because we were parked right next to him, and kind of like, "What's going on? What happened?" and everything. And I told him. He's like, "Dude, I got parts in my car and everything, my van that keeps running tonight." I was like, "Really?" So he basically rebuilt my top end and everything, and got me racing that night. So that's kind of like how we met, and that's what started our whole friendship. And going back to like what I was saying, surrounding yourself around the best. He told me, he's like, "Dude, you got a good bike here, but you got a stock engine. If you want a really good engine," I was like, "Take this card and call this guy." And it was like Varner's card and everything. He's like, "I'll call him tonight and tell him that you might give him a call and everything, and he'll build you a really nice bike or a really nice engine." He does all my engines. He does Denton's engines. He's your guy and everything. So called him that next day and everything, and went over to his house, and Denton's bike was actually right there. And I brought my bike over there and everything. And he's like, "You got a really good bike. You'll win a lot of races, but if you want to win championships," he just slapped the seat. He's like, "Got to build one of these." My dad was with me and everything, and I looked at him, and my dad just kind of shrugged his shoulders, like, "Okay." And I was like, "All right, let's build one." So Varner built me a bike. Ever since, he built all my bikes for me every year for that, actually. So, I ran Varner engines until my last race.
That's pretty awesome stuff right there.
So, yeah.
Cory, I want to thank you so much for your time to come and talk with us here at ATV-TALK. We get to talk to a lot of people in the industry in different walks of life, and you've had an extreme racing career from ATVs to the 1600 cars to Indy cars, and all of us that knew of you in the ATV world did watch your career and watched you in Indy, and so it's a pleasure and an honor to have you on the show, and I just want to say thank you so much, and make sure you keep in contact with us so that we can get you covered for the reunion with all the 80s guys.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. That's I'm stoked to hear you say that right there and everything, because just especially now doing this reunion thing, I'm sitting thinking, first gen, well, I don't have the credits like they do in the 3-wheel ATV world and everything. My only credit was that I got fastest qualifying at the LA Coliseum in '89. I beat John Henney by 1/100th of a second to get fastest qualifier. I remember that day perfect to this day. After qualifying, I'm sitting in my motorhome right there, minding my own business, and Eric Cobb and his dad, Steve Cobb, come knocking on my door like, "Dude, congratulations." I'm like, "For what?" He's like, "For qualifying." I'm like, "What about it?" They're like, "Dude, they posted qualifying times. They're like, you got fastest qualifier." I'm like, "What? No." So, but I was like, "Really?" I said, I felt fast, but I didn't feel I was that fast. But that's the usual thing in racing. When it feels slow, that's when you're hauling ass.
Right.
When you're ahead of the bike instead of chasing the bike or chasing the car, that's when everything just slows down, and then you just got that rhythm and everything.
Exactly.
But no, it's awesome to, like I said, for you to say that and everything, because I love the sport. I wish things would grow in the sport or be more noticeable and recognized and everything, and especially now in the last, like I said, last few years of me just like collecting some of these bikes and wanting to ride. I got a little Polaris 90s for my son, so I'm gonna get him out, started riding on it and everything.
That's awesome stuff right there, brother. As always, I want to extend an invitation to have you come back on the show. There's so many things about your career that we probably haven't covered, and I want to invite you back to go over those at a later date. And then again at the reunion, we'll talk some more as well.
Yeah, I'm available anytime. I mean, that'll be awesome.
Excellent.
The team here at ATV Talk would love your feedback. Please email us at hello@atvtalkpodcast.com. If you're in need of a consultation for your current racing program, a custom ATV, or an industry guest speaker, I have the company for you. Duncan Technologies International Inc. offers host, MC, and guest speaking services at events, builds custom ATVs for recreational riding or racing around the world, and they offer consulting services for professional teams or individual racers. Send inquiries to duncantechinternational@gmail.com or call 619-716-1532 for more information. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, don't forget to share us with your family and friends. The podcast is available on all streaming platforms, and you can find us on social media as ATV Talk Podcast. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Rumble, and Twitter.